stars out tonight. I don't know if it's cloudy or bright, 'cause I only have eyes for you, dear. The moon may be high, but I can't see a thing in the sky, 'cause I only have eyes for you.
I'm Carmen Twillie Ambar, president of Oberlin Conservatory. Welcome to Running to the Noise, where I speak with all sorts of folks who are tackling our toughest problems and working to spark positive change around the world. Because here at Oberlin, we don't shy away from the challenging situations that threaten to divide us. We run towards them. What does it take to help someone find their voice? Not just train it technically, but truly find it, to help it see its shape, its character, its charisma. For Tanya Hall, associate professor of jazz voice at Oberlin Conservatory, mentorship isn't just part of the job, it is the job. It means showing up for students in practice rooms and in life. It means guiding them through failure and doubt and helping them grow as musicians and as people. One of Latanya's most successful mentees in recent years is Georgia Heers, a graduate in the class of 2021. Just 4 years ago, Georgia was a jazz studies major in Latanya's studio. Now, she recently made her Broadway debut in Good Night and Good Luck, a new play starring George Clooney. The production has already broken records, netting nearly $3.8 million in 1 week, making it the highest grossing non-musical play in Broadway history. Set in the early 1950s, the play tells the story of journalist Edward R. Murrow and his televised takedown of Senator Joseph McCarthy at the height of the Red Scare. It's a story about free speech, the power of the press, and the moral courage it takes to confront disinformation then and now. Georgia plays Ella, a jazz singer performing live in a neighborhood studio as the news unfolds. Her renditions of songs like Let's Face the Music and Dance, How High the Moon, and I've Got My Eyes on You were singled out in the New York Times for offering pleasure and respite, while slyly commenting on the action. But behind the spotlight is something quieter. A student who still reaches out to her Oberlin teacher before a big audition. The mentor taking that late night call. A relationship built on trust, care, and shared purpose. Today, on Running to the Noise, we're pulling back the curtain with Tanya Hall and Georgia Heers to talk about what mentorship really looks like, the kind that lasts beyond graduation and spans across stages, cities, and years. Georgia, we're so proud of you, and we're so excited about what's been happening in your career. And we know that you are the hottest ticket in town in New York City. And the students on campus have been saying to me, yeah, your podcast is fine, President Ambar, but could you get some young people on there? Could you get some people that are close to our age? So you are my first Oberlin alum that I think specifically qualifies as young. And that's right. You're an alum who's been here doing my time at Oberlin. Mm-hmm. So I've heard you sing in multiple ways. You were in the Sonny Rollins ensemble, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. I have a distinct memory of you coming to one of our performances and you did a beautiful speech. And I was just like, that's my president. I love my president.
So I remember you from that. And I don't think I have a visual memory of this, but my understanding was that you sang at my inauguration. Were you part of the gospel choir?
Yes. Oh my gosh, LaTanya. Yeah, that was actually,
Yes.
I mean, you can speak on that better than I can, LaTanya.
We put together 20 students from the conservatory and the jazz department to sing for this inauguration. And you were one of those singers with the group. That was the first group out. And that performance where we got a standing ovation was the one that really sort of kickstarted the whole push to bring gospel back to Oberlin.
Right. I asked for a gospel choir. And at the time, the institution was trying to kind of reconfigure the gospel choir. It had a long tradition here at Oberlin. It had not been sort of active for several years. And LaTanya was trying to pull it back together. And so everybody thought that this would be a great opportunity to kind of showcase this effort. And you are absolutely right that you all got a standing ovation. And one of the things that's been so interesting is people would come and talk to me about this inauguration, and they would always say, wow, that inauguration was just so different, because they're typically pretty staid, stiff ceremonies. But I have to say our gospel choir showed up and showed out, as gospel choirs are wont to do. And so I'm just so happy that I could reconnect with you through that early moment to now to this stage that you're in your career. So I'm just excited to have you on the podcast and to have Professor Hall here as well. Let's talk a little bit about your beginnings. So how did you come to meet, and how did you come to Oberlin? So Georgia, we'll start with you.
Sure, yeah. My whole family listens to like a whole slew of music, but my mom really was the push to get into jazz, because I grew up singing like musical theater and opera, and I was like, I was set to be doing opera at Oberlin. But my mom, she said, there's a jazz program too, and it's very young. And there's this beautiful Black teacher, and she printed out this article of you, LaTanya, talking about your first couple years at Oberlin. And she was like, look at this. This is interesting. And, I was like, okay, this is interesting. I had no idea about jazz. So I was hesitant about that, because I'm a very proud person. So it's hard for me to do something that I don't know anything about, and to like
interesting
to humble myself to learn. But it's always the most rewarding experience. So it ended up being that I went to Oberlin and found you, LaTanya, and honestly, it changed my life. It changed the whole trajectory of the music that I make and that I love. And yeah, so it was definitely my mom who made that connection.
Well, tell your mama thank you. I was telling President Ambar yesterday, you are the kind of student that comes along rarely in a teacher's lifespan. From the first time hearing you, even though you had very little exposure to jazz, the talent was overwhelmingly there. You came in and you did the work, and you have turned into an incredible artist and musician. And I'm very proud to see all of the things that you've been doing.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the jazz program here at Oberlin and why you feel like it's so distinctive, and what drove you to pick out this voice and say, no, this person needs to be a part of my studio.
We started the jazz program here in 2015, and I was hired to come in and build the program from the ground up. And we started with 4 students. We've steadily continued to build the program, and I'm very proud to say that my students are out there working and making music and changing the course of the genre with what they're bringing to it. What's unusual about this program and what's unique to this program is that we are a school that is fully dedicated to teaching jazz. Our faculty is fully versed in this genre of music. As a matter of fact, we have 2 NEA jazz masters, Gary Bartz and Billy Hart. We have Eddie Henderson, Gerald Cannon. These were the progenitors of the genre. So it's been fantastic for the students, one, to hear about their experience and to study at their feet. I don't think there's another program like this in the country. What I look for in my students is I'm understanding when they come in that they're not coming in fully developed. Right? Okay. They're not coming in as a jazz artist. They're coming in as a musician who has a desire to learn about the genre. So I'm looking for the seeds of what could be great artistry. And Georgia came in with all of that. Great musicality, great pitch, a good understanding of her instrument, and a good understanding of technique, an amazing ear. She could hear anything. And it made it very easy to teach her because she had never improvised before.
Oh, wow.
She'd never
an
done
important
any
part
of
kind of the jazz
It's the root of it.
It's the root of it, right?
And there's something that I always say to my students, this music and like blues and jazz is the mother of all the music that they're listening to and loving anyway. It's the mother of rock and roll. It's the mother of R&B. It's the mother of neo soul and the mother of gospel, which is also rooted in improvisation and rooted in taking the basic shape and architecture of a song and really making it your own. And so we were taking some of the skills that she innately already had and just honing them.
So maybe you can help the audience sort of understand how the studio process works and just walk us through what a session is like so we can understand how this mentorship relationship develops over time.
Sure, yeah. I remember some of our first lessons, to my surprise, were spent talking, just on a personal level, who each of us were. I was very curious about who she was and what her story was and her trajectory. And I think that is one of the most inspiring things about you, Tanya, is that you're a working, touring musician as well as an educator. And that does so much to a student when they're taught by someone that they can literally see themselves hopefully like emulating in terms of their profession. A lot of the lessons were just spent kikiing, like talking, just hanging out and getting to know each other so that that mentorship could be built. Because I think a lot of times in the education system, there's not that personal element that allows you to establish trust. And I think if you're someone who is afraid of making mistakes or looking dumb, that's going to be a huge roadblock to learning, because that's all that getting better is just failing over and over again. Initially, we just established trust, and then we got to the nitty gritty, which was the best thing for me. I've always struggled with my work ethic.
Bet you that's changed, Georgia. if you're doing that 8 shows, I bet you that work ethic is ready and going exactly where it needs to be.
Hello, that woke me up. It was also 2 years after like being in any type of school, and so the schedule kind of like was a cold plunge. Getting up, getting to the place, being on time. But
welcome to the real world, honey.
Welcome, and there it is.
It's scary out here. But yeah, we did a lot of hard work because I didn't come from really any formal experience of learning how to improvise. So we started from the beginning, and there was a big learning curve. And she really instilled in me like doing the work on your own. So she would give me the tools, a worksheet, a tune, or like a set of music to learn or scales to learn. And then I'd have to go and do it on my own, or else the next lesson was not going to be very fun.
So the students are coming into the studio how often?
We meet 1 hour a week for our private lessons.
Okay.
But then I designed a series of courses for the jazz vocalists. So we do a course in circle singing, which is free improvisation, but really opens them up to the idea of improvising without any framework, just coming up with music and then building songs around that. And then I also teach a performance class where we talk to them about how to get inside of a lyric. And then most importantly, how to communicate with instrumentalists in a way that's most effective, because that's going to be their bread and butter when they get out into the real world. We spend a lot of time, especially in the first year that we're working together, talking about technique. And understanding how to keep your voice healthy, how to place it correctly, how to breathe correctly. And George, you said something really important. The conservatory model is such a wonderful model because you study with the same teacher for 4 years. I know Georgie's voice intimately, right? Because we spent so much time together, and I know the things that we really have an opportunity to really fine tune what's happening and fine tune the way that we work with each other, which is, it's a gift to be able to have that kind of relationship with students, but it's super important. We have to establish that sense of trust with each other, because this relationship with your private instructor is probably the most intimate relationship that you will have with a professor across the campus. So I want to make sure that my office and our time together is a safe landing place, that they can come in here, they can make mistakes, they can fall on the ground, they can break down in tears. And it's a place where I can help to guide and to nurture as well as educate.
It reminds me so much of what the best mentorship relationships look like. You have this trust where there can be critique, but that critique is grounded in love and care and support, so it comes from the right place. I'm wondering, Georgia, how did Professor Hall's mentorship guide your evolution as a performer, both kind of your personal performance framework, but even personally, those 4 years, how would you describe that evolution?
I love that you ask personally as well, because I feel like I changed so much from the person who I was initially when I still remember our first lesson with Tanya, and we did an aria because I told her I was a classical singer and I wanted to work on technique. So we did an aria. I think I have the lesson recorded actually, and sometimes I go back to it, you know. Sometimes I go back to it because if I'm like, okay, I need to get back to my technique, let me find something to remind myself what the heck I'm doing. Okay, this is a mess.
So the bridge.
Yeah. I just remember being very uncertain at that point in your life. That's pretty common, but I think I was just so uncertain about myself and my own abilities. And throughout the 4 years I spent with LaTanya, I learned to really believe in my abilities and to back up that belief with work.
I hope all the students heard that.
It's a call in.
Yeah, I hate to point it out, students. I'd be snapping like y'all do when y'all are in meetings with me, but I won't do that. So confidence funny. Backed by work. Learn to believe in yourself, backed up by the work that you put in.
Yeah, because I've learned now in the professional world, it makes other people respect you more. You just learn to respect yourself more as well. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away. Of course, my instrument has changed. It's just matured and developed with the help of LaTanya's leadership. And I think also my palette, like my musical palette, I was shown so much music by you, LaTanya. So many great artists that I really strive to, sing like.
Right.
And albums that I go back to, that I think I'll go back to for the rest of my life, to have that frame of reference for the level of singing that I want to achieve. Like, I remember you showed me this album, Swingin' Easy by Sarah Vaughan. And that's like one of Sarah Vaughan's most tried and true albums. But if I hadn't been exposed to that, I would not be singing the way I'm singing now. And I would not have the goals that I have. There's so much.
And thank you for saying all of that. It's always gratifying to get that kind of feedback as a teacher. It's letting the baby bird fly from the nest to do their own thing. And we want you to do it with the lessons that we hoped to instill over our time together.
I don't want to go too much further without mentioning Georgia is in the hottest play on Broadway. I think that's pretty much everybody's agreeing to that. You all are surpassing Denzel and Jake Gyllenhaal and Othello. That pretty much feels like you're on the right track there. So some of you may know about Good Night and Good Luck, a play that's starring George Clooney. And if you haven't read the reviews of Georgia's performance, then you are missing it. They are describing her in ways that only the brightest stars on Broadway are described. So I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about that experience. And so talk about getting that play and that show.
Yes. So I'm learning more as I continue to be in this industry is that most artist success, and I think this is generally true in life as well, is due to the generosity of others. So I really found that I've had just amazingly inspiring people who have been so generous to me and have taken chances on me and given me opportunities. I was introduced to this world through Brian Carter, who's an amazing drummer and composer, conductor, singer extraordinaire. He's kind of one of those people that's like, do you sleep? Or like,
yeah, that's right. How are you stuffing us all into these 24 hours?
Exactly. I'm like, I'm barely able to wake up. Like, but he's amazing. And he actually did the music for Some Like It Hot, if some of the listeners are familiar with that production. But I was in a production of his, an oratorio called Rustin and Renaissance, about the life and work of Bayard Rustin, who is a huge unsung hero. He organized the March on Washington, but his story is not highlighted because he was gay, and he was very much MLK's right-hand man and led in a lot of those nonviolent movements. The production was telling the story of Bayard Rustin, and it was a beautiful production. I got to sing a song in it. The writers, George Clooney, of course, and Grant Heslov, and the director, David Cromer, all were exposed to my singing through this production that Brian put together. So that was the leading point into this role, which is interesting because we were talking about earlier, the inspiration of your teachers is like the most important fuel for a student. I saw Tanya's trajectory, and she was on Broadway and found her way to jazz. And when I came to the decision of whether or not I was going to be in this production, because it was a couple months off, I would have to not do any jazz gigs.
Right. So no other gigs you can be doing at the time. You had to dedicate yourself to a short run show, but still a show that's going to take you kind of out of a certain market for a while. So it's a decision.
Exactly. And me as a green person in the industry, I was like, is this a good time to be pulling myself out of the quote unquote jazz world? I thought to my mentors. I thought to you, Tanya, and I also talked to a friend of mine. And actually, you kind of talk about this with Rhiannon in the podcast, which I love that episode, by the way, about how genre and these categories, they're profit driven and they have no truth in like the real art of things.
That's right. When Rhiannon Gittens was here on campus, maybe a year or so ago, we have a long conversation about that in that podcast. Yes.
Yeah. And I loved that because it's so true. When I was thinking about whether or not I should do this experience, I thought about you, Tanya, and I thought about how the path of an artist is winding and there's so many avenues you can take to get to the end goal. And then what even is the end goal? Like, we're just in the pursuit of growing as artists. Yeah, I took inspiration from the fact that you always seemed open to the experience for the pursuit of becoming a better artist, as opposed to, oh, I'm not a Broadway singer, or I'm not a rock singer, or what are these categories?
Right. I always tell my young singers to do everything, because even the gigs that may not seem like jazz specific, so this show is doing amazing things to exposing you to a new audience, right? Yeah. And making sure that people know your name and know who you are and get to hear that beautiful voice. Music is music. And as long as music has the capability of touching somebody, then you've done your job. I was saying this to President Ambar yesterday. Our job, first and foremost, as singers, is to be a storyteller. And a lot of the reviews that I've read about your performance on Broadway, I think there was one review that said, she doesn't have any lines in the show, but she's such a vital part to the storytelling through her song. And I remember I sat in my house and I just kind of applauded to myself because I thought, yay, she's doing exactly what we talked about, which is really like making sure that the audience is feeling every single word that you're singing. And so I'm glad that you're out there and trying all of these new things. And one thing that I also say to my students is sometimes your path will change. You may think you're going to be one thing, and then the universe puts you on a path to do something else. I still think that you're going to have a really incredible and wonderful jazz career. Other opportunities may come up for you to do Broadway or theater where you're singing this kind of music. And now you've got this wonderful experience in your back pocket. Working with one of the greatest artists in the world, George Clooney. Come on. You can't ask for a better Broadway debut.
Oh my gosh. Working with George Clooney has been incredible because he's one of the most humble people I've met, I think. From day one, he came and he somehow already knew my name and was like, hey, Georgia, how you doing? Gave me a hug. I was like, but wait a second. Where's the security? What's happening? Am I allowed to touch you? This doesn't seem right. So there has been this pure humility and like service to his craft of acting. And it seems like he is someone who very much understands his purpose in life and has understood that these are the cards that he's been dealt. And has just in being so humble and like warm and gracious, has created such a beautiful environment with the whole cast to just really be a team and more like a family.
That's great. That's great to hear. It's really, you see these folks from afar, and when they deliver on who you hope they will be,
exactly,
it's always so rewarding. Georgia, I'm wondering whether Ella, the character that you play in Good Night and Good Luck, was the inspiration Ella Fitzgerald?
The character Ella, I also thought she was kind of directly based off of Ella Fitzgerald, but Ella's supposed to be more of like an amalgamation of kind of the jazz divas of the 1950s. So Sarah, Ella, Dinah Washington. And then, of course, I had the option to kind of infuse my own inspirations into the character.
Right.
But interestingly enough, with each tune, Brian Carter kind of told me, okay, this is what I want you to embody Ella in When I Fall in Love. And then I want you to embody Sarah Vaughan in I've Got My Eyes on You. So I kind of had a framework for each of the tunes, but Ella's supposed to be her own character, kind of an amalgamation of the great jazz
That's
divas.
Great. But each one of the songs, is it for every song that you're sort of embodying a different jazz great?
Yes. I at least tried.
That'll be great fodder for the people who listen to this podcast and then go see the show. They can be going through and seeing which jazz great this particular song reminds them of. That's going to be what I do when I see this show. I got my plan. I've got my plan already. Audience, I know what I'm doing. I wanted to ask a couple more questions about the show before we get into kind of what your next steps are. And also, Professor Hall, what your next steps are. I know you're not leaving Oberlin. I'm talking about some professional things that you're doing, just so we all clear that up, because we don't want that to happen. But just wondering what that moment is like when you are literally the first voice that the audience hears. What's going through your mind?
So I remember not knowing what my role really was going to be until I read the script. And then I found out, okay, I'm this character, Ella. She's this jazz diva. She opens the play with the tune When I Fall in Love. And then it all started hitting me. I'm like, oh, wait. So I got to warm up the stage and like usher in George Clooney to make his opening speech as Edward Murrow. And it all started becoming very clear to me of the responsibility that I would have in steering the energy of the play. Because the play is very taut. It's very tense the entire time. And the band and our characters provide kind of a reprieve from that, as well as a film scoring of the story. So to realize, okay, I'll be opening it, put a lot of onus on me to make sure that I am centered and present in telling the story, because I'm starting it off. And then as kind of rehearsals went on and as we started doing previews, some of the cast members would be like, yeah, we sit on the sides and we watch you open the show. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay. And then a couple of days ago, George came up to me with another cast member and was like, yeah, I've been watching you on the sides out of the window. And I'm like, okay, no pressure. So everyone's watching and like, don't mess up. Don't set a weird vibe for the whole play.
Well, I have to say the reviews have been clear. You've been setting exactly the right vibe. Georgia, I'm wondering, this particular play comes at a moment in our country and the political times that we're in. And I'm wondering whether you can speak to what you think the message of this play is in this moment.
I appreciate that question because I felt so thankful that this is my introduction to Broadway and to really feel like this is a impactful story. Because a lot of things can be for entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But then when something is able to entertain and have an entertainment allure, but really be focused on a clear message that it feels really truthful and poignant to me, I'm so thankful when that happens. The relevance is the story. The fact that this is so relevant and parallel to, quite honestly, the fascism we're seeing in our current government. And it's crazy. It's so eerie how parallel it is. So it's really what people will do with the information that they see so clearly in front of them, presented by this huge star that everyone loves.
It's interesting to me that you all are the hottest play on Broadway right now. And I think that sometimes people flock to the art that they need. And I'm imagining that, yes, they're driven by Georgia Heers is there and George Clooney is there and the art is fantastic. Well, Oberlin cares. But I also think that sometimes people flock to the art that they need. And I'm imagining that that's some of what people are experiencing, needing to see that time period compared to what's happening now. And also hopeful that as that time passed, that this time will pass too.
Wow. So beautifully said. Absolutely. You can tell by the audience's reaction that this is exactly true, President Ambar. You get audible responses. Yeah.
I'm sure. I haven't seen the show yet, but I saw the movie that George Clooney did many, many years ago. And I remember those lines from Edward R. Murrow. We all who have read history understand the times of McCarthyism. Yeah. And we see shadows and things that don't even feel like shadows of that period of time as we are walking through what it means to be in this country right now. I don't doubt that you all will be sold out night after night. I want to return to this notion of reaching back out to your mentors as you're preparing for this work.
Since I've graduated in 2021, every year we meet up and we talk about life and our careers. And it was really helpful and important to be doing that because at times, I have struggled, as many like freelance artists,
right?
Especially like in the economy that we are in and in the crazy last 4 years that we've been existing in. It's interesting and it's difficult to try to reason, okay, why is this important that I be pursuing art when I could maybe be doing something more quote unquote impactful or productive or like something that you'd see the fruits of the labor sooner. And each time I've met with Tanya, she's guided me back on the path of purpose, kind of what I was saying about George. And everyone, we all have been given special abilities. And to kind of hone that special ability is what I'm learning is my task in life. So every time I've met with Tanya, I've been guided back onto the path of like,
this is what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly. So it's interesting also how you just never really know what's around the corner for you. And it kind of goes back to those beginning lessons of that you instilled in me, LaTanya, of just like continuing to do the work and then work will reap benefits.
It will come. Yes, the work
then
will
the
come.
work will come.
Yeah, you have to be prepared. So we don't wait for the job to come to do the work. You do the work so that the job will come, right? Mm-hmm. That's the important lesson that a lot of people don't always understand, but that's one that I really try to drive home with my students.
One of the reasons why I wanted to ask you that question, Georgia, is because we know that this pursuit is not always easy and that there are challenges along the way. And I'm glad you described it as kind of reaching back out to a mentor and discovering that purposefulness again and that kind of, I describe it sometimes as a faith extender that can let you know that you are on the right path. Because we work so hard to prepare our students for this experience of what it is to be a working artist. And we know it's just not all cupcakes and rainbows and unicorns, right? You have to really want this. And there are not always easy times. And I'm wondering what conversations you can recall that you had with LaTanya about that aspect of it, the kind of business grittiness. This is just not that easy conversations, because I think preparing yourself in that way too, you have to be vocally prepared. You have to get this experience and this understanding of your instrument and all that part of it. And then there's just this business, it's got to be worked. What can you recall from those conversations, or what could you say to the students who are listening about what you would want them to know about that aspect of your career since you left Oberlin?
I have a distinct memory of, it was 2021. I was getting ready to graduate from Oberlin, and it was around application time. And I really didn't want to go to grad school. It was like we were in the midst of COVID, and
that's right.
I was ready to go home and ready to, my plan was like, okay, I'll go home for a year and save up because I had no money and was like, I don't know, how am I going to afford school? I don't know if I want to go to more school. I was just feeling like I needed to go home. I remember we had a lesson, we talked about it. To my surprise, instead of being met with like, oh, like, I'm sorry you feel that way, LaTanya was like, oh no, ma'am. No, you're going to go home and do what? And I, made up some plan. I'm like, I'm going to work here. I had no plan for what I was going to do. I just wanted to be in a safe space because I felt tired and I felt burnt out. And she said, Georgia, I'm worried that if you go home, that's all you're going to do. You're going to stay home forever. And it goes back to that really important aspect of mentorship is with a good mentor, they know you. And she wouldn't have said this to her other students, maybe, but she knew that my real intention in going home was to like hide myself again and to stop the progress I was making. And so she gave me some hard truths about how I was running from things by going home. So she helped me to put an application together real quick to one school, and that one school was Juilliard. And I was like, this is never happening. And I moaned the whole time and cried and was like, oh, I can't do this. And then spring rolled around and I got in. And
Great.
All I had was her to thank for that, because there was no way. I remember her husband, Andy Millen, amazing pianist, also called me and was like, what's going on? I'm hearing from LaTanya that you're not going to do this. Like, really adamant.
Full court press. Listen.
It was. And it changed my life. I wouldn't have moved to New York. I wouldn't have met all the people that I did to, be in this production now. So I'll always remember that conversation.
It's funny because I said to my husband when I was working with Giorgio, I said, you got to hear this girl sing. And I would often play for him clips and stuff. And then he met Georgia, he came to her junior recital. And then he actually hired her to do some recording on his stuff, which became part of the Grammy Award nominated Black Lives Matter record that came out a few years ago.
Yes.
We always laugh. Andy calls her Mini Me because he says, he goes, she reminds me so much of you when you were younger in that stage of your sort of singing career. But we've kind of adopted her as like, the daughter that we never had. So.
Right. So the whole mentorship family got involved to say, not going home, kiddo. You're headed to New York City.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, LaTanya, when you first heard the news that Georgia was going to appear on Broadway in this incredible show, Good Night and Good Luck, what was your first reaction?
I squealed like a little girl. I literally was sitting in and I went, what? Oh my God. Right? So the first thing I did was get on the phone with my husband. I'm like, Mini Me is on Broadway. She got a role on Broadway. Like, we were so proud. And then I texted Georgie, to just say, I'm super proud of you. Just heard the news. Yeah. That's amazing. But yes, I mean, for me, it's always extremely gratifying to see my students out there doing it.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah. I always knew that Georgie was going to do great things. And this is just the beginning for her.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. I'm hoping that both of you will talk a little bit about your albums and maybe also what's next. So, Georgia, we'll let you go first to talk about your new album.
Sure, yeah. I was awarded a Chamber Music America grant a few months ago to put together an album under the kind of instruction or like artistic leadership of any mentor that you could choose. I chose this wonderful singer named Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, who I think you showed me, LaTanya. So I've been loving her music for years. Recently got to meet her and develop a relationship with her. So she's been helping me along this process. Yeah, it's my first album.
Yay.
It's so exciting. I'm really excited to see what will come of it. I'm very much in the workshopping process of it. Okay. But we're set to record in August, and then hopefully it will be released later in the year.
That's an exciting new addition to your repertoire. We're really excited to hear that, and we'll make sure we promote it on our airwaves. It's just really interesting to me as we've watched a series of Professor Hall students sort of go out and take the world by storm, really. I was talking to Dean Quillen about Professor Hall, and I was telling him that we were going to do this podcast, and, in that booming voice that only the way Dean Quillen can say, he's like, LaTanya's students are killing it, Carmen. They're killing it. So it doesn't surprise me that you are out killing it, as he would say, but also because of this wonderful mentor that you have who's killing it as well. So Professor Hall, if you could tell us a little bit about what your next big project is.
I've got a new record coming out. It'll be released August 22nd. It's called Pretty Eyes. Working with a lot of faculty here at Oberlin. We've got these incredible legends of the music, and so I asked them if they would be a part of it. But I have Cyrus Chestnut on piano. I have Gary Bartz, who teaches saxophone here on sax. Eddie Henderson, who teaches trumpet here on trumpet. Gerald Cannon, who teaches bass here on bass. And a bunch of other artists who have stepped up to join me on this journey. It's reimaginings of probably some lesser known jazz songs, but stuff by Abby Lincoln. I'm even taking a stab and doing a jazz rendition of an Aretha Franklin tune.
Okay.
Right. Ooh. But it's a little mix of everything. I'm just very excited at this is the first album that I feel 100% encapsulates who I am as an artist. Something that I often repeat to my students is that you can never stop growing. And I'm still learning and I'm still growing as an artist, even though I've had a very long career. But I always hope that my next project is a little bit deeper and stronger than my last.
I love it. I will ask you both the last question that I tend to ask all of the folks who happen to be on my podcast. So you'll recall that Michelle Obama was the inspiration for the title of this podcast because she said that Obies are the type of people that run to the noise. That's what kind of distinguishes those of us who are a part of this Oberlin community. So I'm wondering if you all could just, as our last moment together, tell me what running to the noise means to you for either your work or your career, any way you want to think about that phrase. So we'll give our recent graduate the last word, Professor Hall. So we'll ask you first, what is running to the noise for you?
I think it's about taking risks, right? And being willing to step in the fray when things seem scary and when things seem uncertain. That's one of the things that I've always loved about the Oberlin community is our students are bold. They're bold about speaking up for the things that matter to them and the things that are important. And it's also been a bit of a learning lesson for me, too, who tends to be very introverted and very shy, even though I've chosen a career in the arts. But they've taught me to sometimes stand up for things that may be risky, right? But what is the saying? Fortune favors the bold.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is what we're talking about. And I think that running to the noise means being willing to take those steps to make sure that you are heard and fighting for things that are right and just and fair.
Love it. Georgia, you get the last word, running to the noise.
Dang it, man. I didn't think to follow that. But honestly, what you said, Tanya, reminds me of this quote from at the end of Good Night and Good Luck that George says, or it's Edward Murrow's words, but he says, the question isn't about what the 1% or what the people in power will do with the power that they have taken or usurped.
Right.
We know what that looks like. We've seen.
Right.
But it's what will you do with your ability to influence. And President Ambar, like you always said, students from Oberlin, one person can change the world. In a very literal sense, I think running to the noise is about understanding that you have the ability to make change. If not for the entire world, it's in your life, in someone else's life. It's about the daily. It's about the small things. And so I'm learning what it means to organize just in my own life in small ways. It doesn't have to be big.
I just have to say, as president of this institution, I'm so proud of both of you, but I love this mentor-mentee relationship. We know you all will be connected for forever. That will be what it is. But I'm so happy that Oberlin was a part of it. But one of the things I say that's so distinctive about Oberlin is it is who is drawn to us, because I say that every student who gets admitted to Oberlin, that I really do believe that the universe has me here to tell them that there's something special you're supposed to do in the world, and Oberlin's a part of it. So thank you all for joining Running to the Noise. It was great having you.
Thank you so much, President Ambar.
Thank you so much.
Good seeing you.
This is a joy. This is an honor.
Thanks for listening to Running to the Noise, a podcast produced by Oberlin College and Conservatory. Our music is composed by Professor of Jazz Guitar Bobby Ferraza and performed by the Oberlin Sonny Rollins Jazz Ensemble, a student group created through the support of the legendary jazz musician. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and share this episode online so Obies and other folks can find us too. I'm Carmen Twillie Ambar, and I'll be back soon with more great conversations from thought leaders on and off our campus.